This is the October monthly meeting. It is October 16th of 2023. I'm Diane Cece, and we have two board members on board tonight. We have Sarah Hunter and we have George Hensinger. Okay, so basically wanted to talk about a few things with some recent announcements. One is, if you've been following the news, you'll know that the I-95 major construction is still ongoing, and they're hitting a critical stage with the restructuring and replacing and rebuilding of the Westport Exit 17 highway bridge. And so this is going to create major, literally shutdowns on the highway, and also detours that are expected to come through both sides of Norwalk at exit 16 to and from. Exit 16 going out towards the Post Road, and exit 16 cutting through for non-truck vehicles coming through, going to Saugatuck Avenue up 136 and detouring that way. So I'm going to show a slide in a moment of a response from the chief of police for the city of Norwalk in response to an inquiry that was sent from our neighbors across the bridge, the City Hall Neighborhood Association, with questions on their side. And earlier in the weekend, I had written to the public relations group as well to get a better understanding on how they're going to actually detour traffic and manage the impact on East Norwalk on this side. The another announcement I wanted to make is that you may have seen that the candidate forums are coming up. And while ENNA is a completely apolitical, non-political organization, we do encourage people to get involved in local government. And of course, a part of that is voting and understanding the candidates. So I'll show a slide on that. And I'll also, in the next email blast, probably tonight or tomorrow night, I will send out the schedule for those. And then I'm going to just show a quick slide on some items that are properties in East Norwalk that are still what we're calling in the works, with some air quotes there. Kind of rumor mill, but starting to have some activity on them. The real topic we wanted to talk about tonight was the zoning regulations update, but it's still evolving. And I'll let you know what we're planning to do on that so that we can get everyone up to date. It's been very hard to follow unless you're watching hours and hours and hours worth of zoning commission meetings. And even then, the data that's on the city website is not updated at this point. So it's hard to correlate what they're talking about and recommending and looking back at what the impact is actually here in East Norwalk on the neighborhoods over here. And then I want to talk about still a call for volunteers. We're going to need someone who, we're looking for 1 to 2 people to do a review of the final Parks Master Plan. And then we continue to table having ad hoc committees, which we need. And we really want to try to get active with some committees and getting back to hopefully finally interviewing some of the prospective new board members as well. And I'll talk about the timing on that. And then we'll open up for discussion and question and answer. And just a heads up on the next meetings. Our next regular meeting is on the third Monday, of course, which is November 20th. It is the week of Thanksgiving, but we will probably plan to hold a meeting, and as many folks as can attend would be great. And we are anticipating a special meeting either still in October or in early November, where either Steve Kleppen, the P&Z director, or Brian Baker, the principal planner, will actually make a presentation to ENNA regarding the status of the zoning regulations at that point in time, perhaps ready for the final draft. But what they will be doing is addressing specific to 06855 and maybe a little bit of the overflow over into 06851. So keep an eye out for that. They basically committed to being able to do that. It's just a matter of timing, and it will be off schedule from our regular meetings. But in all likelihood, we'll probably look for a Monday night as well. Okay, so in regards to this construction work that's going on up at I-95 now and into Westport, um, they're at a stage of this project where they are literally going to be closing down a couple of northbound lanes and or the northbound highway and the southbound highway entirely, and then on and off closure of the northbound and southbound on ramps at exit 17. And what they intend to do with the highway shutdowns is they're going to redirect, for example, northbound traffic. They're going to shift over into the southbound lanes and have a lane of northbound traffic that goes north, but in the southbound lanes, and then switch again where they have the southbound lanes moving over into at least one of the northbound lanes. So it's actually going to literally be a shift of the highway crossing the divider and and then continuing on. As you can imagine, they're expecting this to cause massive traffic delays and concerns on the highway itself. So they've had a communications campaign going on for quite some time, communicating with the trucker organizations and a whole host of the news organizations, et cetera, to get the word out to try to get as many trucks to find alternative routes like I-84, and also to have people plan not to be traveling during the time when the highway is actually shut down. Now, having said that, we know that one of the paths of least resistance then is going to be exit 16 coming through East Norwalk, either being routed out to Route 1, to and from Route 1 heading towards Westport, and then exit 16 to and from going through East Norwalk and up Route 136 into Westport. So one of the responses that came through today at the inquiry that City Hall Neighborhood Association did, our folks over there wrote to a number of people asking for information on how this was going to be handled. And I just wanted to highlight two items on here. And in a second, I'm going to provide you the information to the state's DOT website that's going to give you all the information on this project, the timelines, the maps, the detours, and they even include a video of how they intend to route truck traffic and vehicular traffic. So for the state of Connecticut, they're going to have a team of 8 troopers that are going to be assisting with the traffic and to respond to any collisions or any traffic incidents that are going on. And this email that's coming from our new chief of police, James Walsh, indicates that they're going to have 5 officers and 1 supervisor. They'll be posted at exit 16 to direct traffic that does exit to Route 1. And then there'll be a 2nd officer at Route 1 and East Avenue to direct them north on Route 1 to Westport. The other officers will be posted at other key exits and areas that we've identified as possible detours to avoid the low bridges and other areas of the city. So they have been working together, a whole group of enforcement folks, to try to make this as manageable as possible. One of the concerns that we have naturally is we're not quite sure how they intend to route folks over to Route 1 unless there's signage indicating to someone where their final destination is or where they're trying to go to. Because if there is a detour, it's likely that GPS software services things like Waze. If someone's going into Westport that would normally get off at 17 and be in the Saugatuck area, it's logical then that we're going to see that GPS services like Waze are going to direct them to come exactly through East Norwalk. So we do still have some concerns on this. I'm going to continue reaching out to Bridget Moriarty. She's the public engagement officer with the consulting firm that's been engaged to manage this project. And we'll try to get some more information on how exactly they think they're going to manage that, especially as a lot of this is happening right now, but especially over this coming weekend, which is the weekend of October 20th. And we'd be especially concerned if there are any other major beach activities that are going on, any more nonprofit walks or runs or events that are going on down at the beach, because that would complicate and actually just exacerbate what's going on with the traffic flow right now. Okay, so for folks to get the latest information on this and to stay up to date, we're recommending that you do two things. One, please visit the actual website that contains all of this information. But rather than try to rely on ENNA to continue to send email updates, which change pretty frequently, we do always encourage you to sign up for the email updates yourself so that they're coming directly to your mailbox. And I think in some cases you can, there may be some instances where you can provide your cell phone and you can get text alerts as well. But the website for this is simply I-95 NorwalkWestport.com. If you want to jot that down, and I'll also have this in the email that I'm sending out either tonight or tomorrow night, so that you'll have that as well. Okay, Sarah, anything in the chat right now that's related to this that I need to address, or?
There was, but it seems as if we have an ask and answer from two people. Lisa said, when is this approximately happening? Allison said weekend of 10/20 this weekend. And then I believe again, first week in November. Can you just confirm that's right?
Yep, that's right. And then there's some peripheral work that's going on that's already started and is happening now, and other work that will continue beyond that first weekend in November, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done to restore the area, and then also to revegetate and implement landscaping plans as well. But in terms of the real bulk of the traffic issues, that's those dates are accurate. Okay, so wanted to bring this up, and before I post this again tomorrow, I think that I saw somewhere on social media that there may have been a change in either a date or a venue for the Board of Education Candidate Forum. But I will confirm that. This is the official notification that came from the League of Women Voters for the public candidate forums and debates. There is another one that I believe is a paid event that I think either goes through the Chamber of Commerce or one of the business councils. And I'll look up the information for you and post on that as well. But these are the public free events that are going on. So this Thursday is the Common Council at Large Candidate Forum. And that's going to be in the community room at City Hall. These are in-person candidate forums, and that's from 7 to 9 at City Hall. And then the following week on Thursday, the 26th, there'll be two candidate forums. There'll be the mayoral candidate forum, and then the in-district for the 5 districts. Those Common Council forums will be that night. And this is going to be held at close to City Hall at Congregation Beth El at 109 East Avenue. And that's kind of in between, say, the Norwalk Inn and Conference Center and City Hall on the same side of the street. The League of Women Voters is telling us that there will be time for audience questions at all the forums. They don't generally do this as an open question. They normally, what they do is they hand out postcards and, I'm sorry, index cards, and you can fill out your questions, and they will have volunteers that will collect those. And then they have a screening committee that represents 3 of the political groups that will screen those and present those. So I believe they're going to do that the same way. And then finally is the one that I said I want to confirm, or you can look it up on your own. The Board of Education candidate forum is this coming Wednesday on the 18th from 7 to 8:30. And that one is via Zoom, it looks like. Okay, and then next on our agenda, just wanted to bring up a few parcels here that we've been trying to follow. Some have evolved a little bit more. We're trying to get more definitive information on them, but we've talked in the past about the future of the Masonic Lodge on Gregory Boulevard. They had confirmed at one point that they were looking to head to contract on a local church that was hoping to purchase both the Masonic Lodge property and the property they own next to it, which is potentially going to be rezoned for multifamily residential. And the last information we had on that was that fell through, but there's potential other buyers that are looking at it now, and we don't have an update on that, but hopefully we'll be reaching out to the leadership of the lodge to see if there's anything that they're able to share with us at this point, that doesn't breach any negotiations that they're in. And then there's also Jimmy's Diner on Van Zant. I think most of you know that that business has closed. The family is now apparently in contract for sale. It's been in the contingency stage for a little bit now, and I haven't checked it in about a week, but I don't believe that it's advanced any more than that stage of the real estate process. We can tell you that the property, though, through the listings, was specifically marketed as being in the East Avenue Village Transit Zone, or EVTZ, and noted that the parcel itself can be approved for up to 21 apartment units. Again, to refresh your memory, that would be based on providing public amenities where they gain bonus points that allow them to build a higher building than normal and have more apartment units than normal. The other one that keeps floating around, again, nothing definitive. We don't really want to be part of rumors, but we want to address these things because we know people are concerned with them, is the St. Thomas School property. And that one has been on the radar screen because it essentially fits the same guidelines that allowed the One Cemetery Street project to actually be created and approved. And we don't know at this point the intention of the diocese for what they're intending. I personally had heard that they had expressed that they weren't interested in selling that parcel, but I certainly haven't been able to reach out to anyone at the diocese at this point, but I probably will do that. And then finally, I think some people had missed one of our prior announcements. I'm not sure if it was in an email or not, but the long vacant parcel at exit 16 next to Rite Aid, the old Howard Johnson's parcel, was purchased by the state of Connecticut, the Department of Transportation. It was purchased under eminent domain, but at an extraordinary price. I think it was over $3 million. And it was purchased with the understanding that the public use was that it would be used for staging for the walk bridge construction project. As you know, the state normally leases property when they're going to be using it short term, and then the owner would retain it. But in this case, they purchased it. And the reason why we're concerned with that is because then the state of Connecticut owns it, and we want to know what the intention would be for once the walk bridge project and the East Avenue reconstruction project is completed. We are very interested in knowing what they think the future use of that would be. And as of today, it's been pretty evasive in terms of, answering anything. They basically say it's pretty far off and they're really not sure what they want to do with it. But many of us see it as a potential pre-purchase a property in anticipation of implementing a future diverging diamond interchange at exit 16. And I don't want to go into all of that, but if you have questions on that, you can email us, and you can go back through some of our prior presentations and take a look at how that interchange would, at exit 16 on and off ramps would change and the impact it would have over here. Or you can email us and I'll send you some information on that. And if someone else has other information about either recent sale of parcels in East Norwalk that seem to be something that could fall under the EVTZ zone, or other parcels that would be of concern for us for use and development, you can send that into us as well. And the email is info@eastnorwalk.org. Okay, I'm throwing this map up here just so that it stays recognizable. This is what it looks like on the city's zoning regulations update screen when you go to the city website, but the proposed zoning map is not updated. So if you do go back to the interactive map, you can see the updates that I think are through the July 25th date, I want to say. But the updates that they've been making through the summer, based on feedback from residents and stakeholder groups and commissioners and staff, are not yet in this map. And this is what we were hoping to have today, but it's not updated yet. I did want to point out again, because there's some confusion on this when you're reading, when you go into the city's website and you're looking at the zoning regulations actually that are there posted. I just wanted to go over when you're looking at land uses, and I may bring that screen up if we have time, but the legend for those, when you're looking at the different zones that they're recommending across the top, and then down the left-hand side are all the potential uses. The actual legend for that is if you see a P, it means that it's permitted. And so basically it's something, if somebody comes with an application to zoning and they meet all of the regulations and criteria, then it would be permitted. NP means not permitted. NR means it's not regulated. Those usually are uses that are city-owned properties. PL means it's permitted with limitations, and they have a separate table that you can look up the limitations. And then PL1 is an important one because it's permitted with limitations, but it's still subject to a special permit. And so they may change this designation now to SPU1, just so that it's a little bit clearer. And then finally, anything that you see in the use table that says SPU must be applied through as a special permit. And just to refresh your memory, a special permit serves two purposes that you would be concerned with. One is that it means that a public hearing is required. And two, it means that there are 13 conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission must consider when they're evaluating the application. I'm not going to go into the zoning districts here because just as of last week, Director Steve Kleppen had suggested for simplicity that in addition to implementing a new zone that's going to cover single family, because they have significantly reduced the amount of parcels that they're considering now for upzoning to two family. So he's going to be adding in a new zone that designates single family. And some of the codes that you see here now are going to be changing to more accurately reflect if it's single family and the size of the zone, if it's residential, and it could be a larger single family structure, etc. So these things are going to be changing. And when we have them, again, we'll be posting them so people can see them. But I'll just backtrack again and say the real intention is for us not to try to struggle through this ourselves. Even when we get a couple of you to volunteer to help us go through and really digest everything that's in the recommendations. The idea is to literally have Steve Kleppen and or Brian Baker come in and present this to us and have a lengthy enough session where there's plenty of time for people to ask questions about their own parcels and about East Norwalk impact in general. Okay, so on the website page for the zoning regulations, there is a link for you to be able to send in your questions, comments, and suggestions. And you do always want to preface those in general by saying that they should be shared with the Planning and Zoning Commission, although it's my understanding that all communications does get shared with them. And you'll be communicating again with Brian Baker, the principal planner, and Steve Kleppen, the director. We recommend that you do keep our elected officials in the loop so that they have a finger on the pulse of what people are concerned with, what people like, what they don't like, and suggestions that you have as well. So we do encourage you to copy elected officials. And if you can, to also carbon copy info@eastnorwalk.org. So instead of us having to go in every week and look for letters from residents over here, it's easier for us if you just copy us on those. A quick reminder, we do still have a handful of signs, I think maybe 10 or so, if people are still looking for signs to put up in your neighborhood. That send that the message there about about no to upzoning, and to make sure that they're not going to rush through these changes. I'll give you an update on that in a second as well. And then also the petition is, I think we're still at 970 in the actual petition. So we are still accepting signatures on that and are going to be turning in the petition to city staff shortly. So you can still go in and sign the petition if you haven't already done so. And then in terms of the timing now, Steve Kleppen has indicated to the commission that what he's looking to do is probably go several more weeks on this review and the modifications to the plan, but also to have at least, I think he said at least 2 to 3 weeks in between the time they are able to post a final draft of this and the time that a public hearing would be scheduled. ENNA is suggesting at least 3 to 4 weeks in between the time they do a draft and the time they have a public hearing. Obviously, we'd like even more than that when we can, because it's going to be a lot to review. But at this point, it does seem unlikely that anything would be happening before the election. And it does seem that we now have a better kind of mentality and attitude with the city that this thing needs to be done right and not simply rushed through in haste. Okay, and to that end, too, we still are looking for volunteers. We do know there's a couple people out there. I don't know if they're on here tonight because I'm not watching who's in. But if you've reached out to be a prospective board member to discuss that with us and volunteer, I thought that I'd be able to get to folks in September, and that ship has kind of sailed. So I'm going to be looking now for after the November elections. If you're interested in volunteering or especially joining our board, then please send us an email at info@eastnorwalk.org so that we can reach back out to you. For right now, we are looking for 2 volunteers who would be able to review for us the final adopted Parks Master Plan and kind of go through that with a fine tooth in regards to the parcels that relate to East Norwalk. And it would be really helpful if the volunteers, I mean, we're happy for anyone who can help us, but if you have a strong interest in parks and or recreation and the use in our parks, then that would be very helpful. when it, for folks to actually do the review. So please, if you can, if you're interested in helping us with that, we really need you to reach out now. It has been adopted, but as you know, with master plans, just like the master plan for Veterans Memorial Park, sometimes they get funded and paid through and hired consultants and go through public hearings and get adopted. And then they sit on the shelf for 10 or 11 years. And many of the things that we looked for in that plan never actually got requested for funding by city staff. So even though this has been adopted, nothing actually happens until staff requests the funding, either through operations or capital budget. So capital budgets for 2024, 2025, actually all those reviews start now and then carry over right into after the first of the year in the city budgeting process. And this is why we really want someone now who can help us review this so that we can, ENNA, on your behalf, can make some recommendations for what we think should be funded, short, medium, and long term. And also, there is a possibility, again, I don't want to be negative or Debbie Downer, but I think there's a possibility that there are some things in there that made the final cut that we would recommend kind of either not being funded right away or potentially never funded. And then we are definitely going to need 2 to 4 volunteers to help us review segments of the final draft zoning regulations when those get issued. And we would kind of chunk those out into logical pieces and then assign people to review them, kind of, help you in terms of what you'd be looking at, what you're looking for, and then work together with me or with someone else on the board to really do a good, thorough review and make sure that we're not missing anything that once this thing gets approved could come back to bite us. I think we had a lot of hard lessons learned with both the TOD study and the EVTZ zoning regulations. And we want to make sure that we're doing a review that kind of protects us from that happening again, and to get out in front of this just as soon as that draft is ready. So we'll be looking for 2 to 4 volunteers now who can be ready when we kind of hit the go button on this. Okay, so I think that's what I had for tonight. Another thing I do want to mention, though, is if you were following the saga of the industrial waterfront study and the recommendations and adoptions for that, you'll also find all of that information posted on the city website. There were some last minute changes based on the feedback that came back with the concern of Water Street, especially south of Washington Street. And so there were some modifications there. But one of the things that we haven't done is check to see if any of the recommendations we made on our side of the river for being concerned with what could be waterfront development over here, particularly in the industrial zone that's down off of, say, Charles Street and where Smith Street is. We need to take another look there. And if there's any red flags that we can still address, we want to be able to address those as well. Okay, so Sarah, anything in chat? And I'll bring this up here. And then if not, we can. Okay, which one is this, Sarah?
Lisa Rogers to everyone. What's up with Mill Pond?
Okay, let me, I will give you an update on that. Actually, that's a good question. And then someone else asked a question on, is there anything on Norden? So on Norden, there is no formal applications that are in. There is nothing pending that we know of. I believe I spoke with Attorney Suchi the last time, maybe a couple of months ago, and they're there wasn't anything pending. Some of you know, though, that ENNA and some of the abutting neighbors have been complaining that there seems to be some transient um, homesteading going on over there with RVs and illegal use of the property with people living in RVs, which is not allowed there. And also some concerns with the building itself being boarded up and no security and what the impact is there on the neighborhood in terms of security or crime or or folks hanging around there. And it's just not good for the surrounding neighborhood. So there's been some enforcement from the city. I understand there are multiple agencies now addressing both of those issues, and I'll try to get an update on that. But in terms of usage, there's nothing new that I'm aware of. And Steve Kleppen continues to kind of leave that parcel out there and has not designated or has not requested the funding for the separate special study that was supposed to have been allocated to look at Norton as an entire parcel for what should be done there. Instead, they only requested the funding to do the industrial waterfront. So this continues to make us nervous. And because the reason is that while that parcel stays unchanged in terms of zoning regulations and in particular the land uses, any one of a number of the original list of objectionable uses could still happen tomorrow. So that's what our fear is, and that's why repeatedly ENNA had asked for a moratorium on any special permits on that parcel, and he's just not inclined to do it. And that I think that that's still concern for us because even though Mr. Kleppen will say it's highly unlikely that an objectionable use, say a petroleum processing facility or storage facility, etc. Those types of things. He will tell the commission that it's unlikely that anyone will apply for that use, but the fact remains that if someone did apply for it, then legally the commission has to consider it. And so we're still concerned with that. Mill Pond. Okay, so Mill Pond, I can share some of this with you. Many of you know that that we had done fundraising to support what we hope would be a legal challenge to the approval of that development there. And we were lucky enough to raise the necessary funds, but more importantly, to have 5 abutting neighbors be willing to come forward and to actually file the appeal because they have legal standing. What ended up happening is that the appeal itself was basically mishandled by the firm that we hired. And there basically was no alternative at the time that we found this out to be able to hire another firm despite our best efforts. Having talked to many other firms, they either had conflicts of interest or they don't do what's called opposition work in this type of zoning, or they didn't have the staff. And so unfortunately what happened is the actual legal filing was filed with the court system, but the notice, which is the legal notification to the defendants, which were the City of Norwalk's Planning and Zoning Commission and the 2 developers, they were actually never served with the actual legal appeal. And there was a very tight window of time for both of those things to happen. The filing that went through to the court system was apparently a day late according to the legal calendar. It could have been disputed, and we did actually dispute it. And there is, I guess, a debate that we can still have about whether or not the judge had the flexibility and the leeway to be able to rule in our favor that due to the negligence of the attorney's firm, um, that it doesn't impact what we were actually appealing, and that he should waive the requirement to have met that date. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And so, even though the defendants and the city ultimately were served, what ended up happening in a nutshell is that we had to file the law firm had to file an appeal to the motions to dismiss, which were filed by both the city and the developers. And it went before the judge, and the judge denied the motion to dismiss to deny the appeal on the motions to dismiss. And so essentially there could have been some other legal avenues to take that would have been costly, would have been involved in still trying to find other attorneys. And at that point, the case basically ended. And so there will be some forthcoming action on behalf of the abutters and ENNA in regards to the attorney firm that created this mess to begin with. But in the meantime, kind of something else that will be coming, though, is actually, I can't really talk about it yet because it hasn't been finalized in writing, but we are hopeful that that the developers, or we know that the developers were still willing to listen to the concerns of the abutters and to reconsider of the some of the items that were in the bonus points and that are in that development. So to be sure to mitigate the impact on their quality of life. But there was no, and there would not have been any consideration, and we knew this going into it, basically, no consideration for the reconfiguration of the actual development. So either the layout of the development or the size, density, and height of the development. So that's where we are right now. We haven't really heard what's going on in terms of breaking ground over there, but I do understand there's been some activity on the parcel. And we expect now that as it looks like each of the time clocks is running out on legal options or have run out, that the developer will be pursuing the development as approved. One of the things that ENNA is looking to do in the new zoning regulations updates is to work with Steve Kleppen and Brian Baker and the commission to fix some of the things that were included in the EVTZ zone, such as the public amenity bonus points, so that we're not facing another similar outcome as what happened to us with Cemetery Street. We have continued to ask Steve Kleppen when he will be bringing this up with the commission and when his staff is going to be revisiting it and asking for a place at the table to make sure that they're working with ENNA and the community to modify that. Like I said, especially the bonus points. And as of today, at least, we don't have a definitive date on where that is in the review, unless it happened last week, because I haven't watched that recording yet. Okay, I think we have a small group tonight and a quiet group. I don't know if that's good or bad. I feel better if people are engaging here and interacting with us, but we're certainly not going to force anyone to.
Something just popped up in chat.
Okay.
What does the city plan to provide access to the mill pond behind the development, from Cheryl?
Okay, so great question. So two things with that. One is so there's going to be public access as part of the public amenity bonus points, the behind the actual new development. And so there is a easement and right of way that connects city property and then the private development property that allows for access behind there. There's basically a couple of different areas. There's going to be a public seating type of courtyard to the rear of the building. If you're at the back of the building, it would be on the left-hand side, what we've been describing as more or less across from Sweet Ashley's. And then a walkway from there that would take you then to an overlook of the mill pond from behind the development. And you can also access that if you're coming on Cemetery Street, and if you pulled into their driveway, you would also be able to, there's limited parking there for the public, and you'd be able to walk in. And there is a kind of a main staircase then that would go down so that you can access to overlook the pond. There would be some seating and presumably where you could take some pictures and things. The one of the things that the neighbors were concerned with going through these legal issues and negotiations is to make sure that there's nothing that's encouraging loitering or after hours access back there that would impact noise and litter and crime or drinking or large groups of people. So the most of that would be kind of open like dawn to dusk, and then in the evening it would close down. There would be some lighting for security, and there would be some appropriate signage that areas are under surveillance as well. Another interesting point, though, when you talk about from behind the mill pond, is that the city's Seaview Avenue project for their Complete Streets project still has in it to completely reconfigure Mill Pond Park, which is at the other end of the pond, across from Overton's and Harbor Lights there, and to add in more parking, which is actually would then be at the prime viewing points of Mill Pond. That seating area and overlook would be replaced with parking, and instead they would increase some of the parking along the left side coming up East Avenue. And we're still working with the city on, trying to kind of renegotiate exactly what they're going to do with Seaview Avenue, especially all the parking and how they intend to look to use private property to support private businesses, which is another concern that we have. So I hope I answered the question there. Oh, Cheryl, there's one other point too. So the city does own a small piece of the parcel that's at the end of oh my God, I'm drawing a complete blank here. The street that's right next to Fenwick, at the end of Fenwick Street. And there was some talk at some point for the city to kind of clear that out and make it public access park as part of Mill Pond. But we're also concerned with that and need to get more information on it because that is a dead end street and parking is at a minimum, and that would also impact the quality of life of folks who live right there. So in addition to the property that's part of the development, is also the city-owned property there at the end of Fenwick. The other part of the access to Mill Pond behind the development was the proposal for the city to have an easement to go through the property to ultimately build some sort of a kind of like a pier thing going out into the pond. But we had been told early on by the DEEP that essentially would never be allowed to happen because of the impact on the pond and because where there are nesting and breeding wildlife there. etc., and also their concerns, as you already know, that were ignored, for lack of a better term, in terms of rising tides and flooding in that area. So one of the things that that we were looking to negotiate with the developers is that is as part of their permit, they were required to fund, I think it was up to $25,000 that they would look to fund for the development of this boardwalk or pier. And in the event that it didn't get built, that the document says that the money would revert back to them. But we're waiting for a commitment in writing that that same money would actually come back to the East Norwalk community in the form of a donation that would assist some of the nonprofits that are here in 06855. And we suggested some as well. So it's not just like, you already know, the DEEP is probably not going to approve this, and therefore, you get to pocket the money. So that money should still come back into our community.
There's one other question in chat. It is, I'm looking for it. Where to go?
There's one on the development in the light industrial zone to not allow warehouse distribution. I believe that has come out, but the tables are not updated yet. And so while they have discussions on these, I don't really, it's kind of like trust but verify. So until these tables actually get updated for what is going to end up in the draft, I personally don't want to commit to saying that that's in or out. But I believe, if I had to say as of today, I believe it's out. And I saw there's another question that came through about bicycle and EV vehicles, about the city considering bike storage in each project, and also charging stations. So yes, so some of the new regulations, they are working with, and this goes for all over the city, working with the developers. Most of them now are voluntarily, knowing that they need to put it in, not just as a requirement or a request from the city, but because they're marketing to their own prospective residential and commercial tenants. They want to be able to use it as a marketing tool to say that they have, bicycle storage. Perhaps some of them will have bicycle rental or bicycles for use. And also they know that in this day and age, they have to offer EV. I think these things for the residential parcels, properties will be, or components will be just for the residents, obviously. But the mixed use developments, I would say that both of those amenities would be for the public. We continue to have a concern. There was just one, I think, in the mall parking lot or someplace recently, where there was another EV vehicle fire. And these things can be difficult to put out. And so we're still concerned about applications that are being approved that have EV in their charging stations within an actual structure as well. So we're keeping an eye on that. Okay, and then I see here from Cheryl in the chat about having gone through the lot in Mill Pond, where there's the ducks and the herons, and yeah, it's actually beautiful back there with the swans. They do like the outflow there at the back fence coming through the culvert. That water actually comes through piping. All of that was actually part of a long time ago, part of a brook that runs down coming from, I think, the northeast. And that outflow pipe now is a stormwater pipe that's huge. It's part of the reason why they couldn't pack even more apartments on this parcel, because they had to divide the buildings where that driveway is that they're proposing. Basically, as you're rounding the bend on Cemetery to go to Gregory, that driveway is there because a massive overflow pipe is right underneath that. And so it wouldn't make sense for them to build over it, knowing that the city might need to have access to that. I would just say too, though, I would just remind people, and Cheryl, thanks for taking the pictures and post them wherever you can, because it's always a good reminder as this project continues to develop and be built, to remind people about just what the impact is ultimately going to be on the wildlife there. But I would remind everyone that that parcel, the parcel itself, remains his private property. And so you'll want to be careful accessing through the parking lot itself. We still contend that you can access through coming through East Avenue, pardon me, through the back there. I guess we've never resolved the issue about what the potential existing easement is there to the pond, but I would suggest that if you're going through from East Avenue side and walking down that way, then you're okay. But if you're coming through the parking lot, say from Cemetery Street, I just want to let you know that it is private property, and we're certainly not encouraging people to be trespassing there. Although, we haven't heard of any, the developers and their attorney, and no one has brought any concerns with that to our attention at this point. I do want to mention another thing, and you don't have to answer tonight, but if you just want to keep this in mind, we had a recent inquiry from a group or a few folks that are potentially looking to modify the regulations in Connecticut and here in Norwalk, that in specific neighborhoods on specific streets, okay, specific being the key word there, they're looking to have it legalized to be able to use golf carts on city streets. And it would be the type of thing that would be regulated. It would have to follow all kinds of very strict guidelines for what type of golf cart, what type of features it must have, speed restrictions, what roads, rules of the road, etc. I'm throwing that out there only because they had reached out, and at this point, as you guys can see from tonight, we have our hands full with a lot of other things, and weren't looking to become engaged in that, but always like to have your feedback. So if it's something you've considered and you have want some more information on it, we can certainly invite these folks in. Like I said, probably like in December or January, depending on what's going on with zoning. And we can certainly hear from them on what their ideas are. But if you feel strongly one way or another about it, you can write into us, and we'll compile some of that feedback and send it in as a compilation. And certainly if you've lived in communities where they allow golf carts on public roads, and you have some experience with that, you can let us know as well. So thank you all very much. We appreciate you joining in on the meeting and the conversation. You can visit us on eastnorwalk.org at the website. You can email us at info@eastnorwalk.org, and also follow us on Facebook as well. And thank you again. We'll see you next month.